Edward P. Joseph is a senior fellow at the John Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies and is also a foreign policy analyst. Is joining us live from Washington, D.C. Mr. Edward, good to see you and good to have you on the show. Thank you for making time for us.
Edward P. Joseph, very glad to be with you today. Please.
How much of a threat is Yemen and the Houthi rebels, and why are they using the waters or seas to launch their targets or raids?
Well, when we talk about the Houthis, of course, we have to be thinking about Iran, which is the Houthis' backer here. And Iran wants to put pressure on the United States, but without directly engaging the United States. So we see so far the war against Hamas in Gaza, the war that we should say that Hamas launched on October 7th, has actually been detrimental to Iranian interests. Why? Because we've seen that the U.S. has built up its military presence in the Mediterranean, which is exactly the last thing that Iran wants. And Iran also fears a direct military confrontation either with Israel or the United States. And we know that because we see the reaction of the main Iranian proxy, Hezbollah in Lebanon, which has backed off from the opportunity to attack Israel at its most vulnerable moment when it's deployed in Gaza. And we've seen that the Hezbollah leader, Hassan Nasrallah, has backed away from generally from that opportunity. And we know the reasons why, because like Iran, Hezbollah fears that it will lose in a direct military confrontation. And that takes us to the Houthis. So the Houthis are the proxy that Iran can use. They do not fear the same way a direct military confrontation with the Houthis in Yemen. Yemen is much further away than Lebanon, of course. So they don't fear in the same way a direct military confrontation. And so Iran believes it can utilize the Houthis to disrupt traffic in the Red Sea and raise the costs on shipping, on international shipping, as your report indicated, by forcing shippers to avoid the Suez Canal and take the much longer path around South Africa and the Cape of Good Hope. Please.
Mr. Edward, let's now talk about this traffic and the Red Sea. How do these attacks on ships in the Red Sea affect global trade?
Well, the answer is very clearly, but if you deter shippers, international shippers, from using the Suez Canal and going through the Red Sea, you add almost a month of travel time and expense. Think of the expense. The goods that are shipping, it takes much longer to get there, and you consume much more fuel in going around the much further passage around the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa, taking that alternate route. So it's about raising the cost to that and to have shippers say, well, we won't take the risk of going through the Suez Canal and the Red Sea. We'll take the longer path. That's a detriment to world trade. That's imposing a cost. But here you see two things. First, we see the United States is doing something about this. This Defense Secretary, General Austin, will be coming to the Middle East next week, working with a coalition of neighbors and American partners in the Middle East to form and enhance this task force that already exists to protect shipping in that vital region. So that's number one. Number two is we know, of course, that there's a great irony here, that it would be the Houthis and Iran, of all countries, that would get involved somehow on behalf of Hamas in Gaza. Why? Because Yemen is already, according to the United Nations, one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world for years now. And according to UN documents, over 22 million people, that's 10 times the population of Gaza, are suffering in Yemen, and about half are children. 11 million children put at risk. These numbers dwarf those in Gaza. So there's a great irony here that you have Iran and the Houthis responsible for this massive humanitarian crisis. And by the way, these are numbers from this year by the United Nations that I'm quoting. responsible for this massive humanitarian disaster in Yemen, somehow believing that they're going to act on behalf of suffering Palestinians in Gaza. Please.
Mr. Edward, finally and briefly, the Houthis have promised to continue their attacks on vessels in the Red Sea, one of the world's busiest shipping routes, we all know that, to pressure Israel to stop its attacks on Gaza. The US and the UK have also been targeted in this water warfare. Who is the most ideal intermediary? And I have to mention here that Oman is saying that it wants to mediate in these talks. But who can stop these attacks, and who will Houthis listen to?
Well, here it's very clear. Oman does perform an important role, and it's proved that as a mediator. So that's, as a channel, Oman is a very good channel. But the reality here is what Houthis and their backers in Iran, which is who we have to think of when we talk about the Houthis. We have to think about Iran and their backers. And here is where we come to the word deterrence. And this is why I mentioned this visit of Secretary of Defense Austin to the region this week, working with U.S. partners in the region and making it clear to the Houthis that this will not be tolerated. The U.S. already has destroyers deployed in the Red Sea. They've already responded and brought down these Houthi drones. And the point is very clearly, as your report itself indicated, that the ultimate suggestion here is that the Houthis put themselves at risk to be attacked in Yemen itself. And that's something that I don't believe Yemen or its Iranian backers really desire. Please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Edward P. Joseph, who's a senior fellow at the Johns Hopkins University School of Advanced International Studies, for talking to us today.
You're welcome.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.